we were having a lively discussion before before the camera started rolling. Very, very quickly, who's been the better exporter of racism over the century?
Yeah.
America.
Okay, so
or Britain?
you know what? I was just sitting here thinking, so I'm going to amend what I said about France because I'm sure there's some French friends who would pull out, you know, some of my Algerian people who will probably, or Moroccan people will probably pull something out. Having said that, I am fairly confident that in terms of footprint and exploitation of racism, America is peerless.
I mean, I'm sorry, right? As a Brit, we originated
Of course,
some of this stuff.
Of course. I mean, we are a byproduct of the UK.
You wouldn't have the
But here's the
Virginia
difference.
slave codes without us. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. I wouldn't be here without them. But I will say that there becomes a point where the child outdoes the parent. And I think we're at that point. If only because of the sheer size of what the United States is. That's the first thing, the sheer size of it. The fact that it's pop culture is a huge export, and it outdoes other countries in terms of the amount of space we take up, the amount of oxygen, we take up in the world, which is something that I have to tell you, like, I wasn't conscious of until, relatively recently in my life, because I became a late traveler. And so just like I can be anywhere in the world and hear, Sam Cooke or Wu-Tang Clan or anything, or be in the most unlikely places and see somebody make a reference to Angela Davis or Malcolm X. By the same token, these are the positive things, but the bad things, I mean, I'm always shocked. When I was researching for the message, it amazed me how many times that the analog for what the plan of Zionism was relied on what happened with Native Americans and the indigenous people in the continent. And I am not saying this Ta-Nehisi Coates, like, I'm not drawing that analogy. The founders of Zionism and the founders of Israel, they made that analogy very explicit. America supporters made that analogy very, very, explicit. I think I put this in this book, but I if I didn't, I've definitely written about it before. When Hitler was researching, the Nuremberg codes and how to enact it, he sent agents into the South, in America, into the Jim Crow South, to figure out, to study, how best to do it. So here we have our fingerprints on the Holocaust, right? Okay. And, on the Nuremberg laws, like our fingerprints are there, which is a white supremacist crime. Let's be very clear about that. You know what I mean? Like, it is a racist white supremacist crime. And then we have our fingerprints on the thing that came out of it too. Like, when you got it coming and going, I mean, you're doing a bang up job.
Well, look, while I may concede that the students surpassed the master in this one regard, you can also see the thumbprints of British history all over Palestine as well. The Black and Tans, who are basically a military death squad operating in Ireland, doing the same thing in Palestine. And that's also part of the reason why there's such a strong sense of solidarity between the Irish and Palestinians.
So we're going to have a racism off here.
Oh, we're going to have a racism off. And by the end of it, like, there's a few things which I will stick up for poor benighted Britain on, right?
Yeah.
We do football better than anybody else, and we do racism better than anybody else. And I will die on that hill. But so the first word.
What's your mass incarceration like?
Oh, okay. Well, it's worst. It's the worst in Western Europe.
See, you're not on our
level. No. Yeah, but that's because we don't have as many people. We're a smaller island.
I bet proportionally we got you beat too.
Okay,
I bet you we don't just have you beat you in size.
The disproportionality of Black people in society versus in our criminal justice system is worse here than it is in America.
That can't be true.
It's true. It's true.
All right, I'll accept it.
All right,
I'll allow it.
I think there's a bit of statistical finicking involved in getting there.
What about the proportionality of citizens, period, in the carceral system? Because while you may, like, I would make the case that you cannot have mass incarceration in America at all without white supremacy. That it itself is a ghost of it. So even as we have white people suffering, we have Hispanics, who are a larger, minority at this point in America, suffering. they wouldn't even think about it if it wasn't for Black folks.
I think that's true. And there's the Michelle Alexander argument with the new Jim Crow, that this is an extension of the sort of tools of social control and oppression going from slavery through the Reconstruction period into mass incarceration. And the history for us is different. You know, the idea of a state-run jail system, it comes from a different history for us. And I think maybe the interesting thing for us is the ways in which colonial policing that because we had a nice distinction for a long time. We said, we've got bobbies on the beat here, and yes, they'll crack your son's head in every so often, and yes, they'll do some awful things to you know, working class white people, but you're never going to be subject to colonial style policing. And then those lines start to blur and blur and blur. And of course
what is it like when you differentiate that between colonial, like as the argument goes, what is colonial style?
So one big distinction would be the sorts of tools which are used. So we used water cannon and, you know, live rounds, live ammunition in Ireland and elsewhere. It was quite a big deal to want to bring water cannon here domestically on, you know, to English streets. I think that the use of internment that happened in Ireland doesn't happen here. I mean, I guess for us, the thing is that it's less defined by white supremacy so much as it is defined by the very specific shape of British colonialism, which begins with Ireland.
You're right. I'm going to tell you why you're right. Okay. All right.
Oh my God.
You're right. So there's this great book by this woman, Carolyn Elkins, which I actually read for the message too. I don't know if I actually shouted her out, but A Legacy of Violence. And it is brutal. Like, it just, I mean, and it's everything. It's India, you know, it's Palestine, it's everything. And so and it's only like recent colonial violence. By recent, I mean like the past couple centuries. It's not like the totality of colonial violence. It doesn't go back to, say, the founding of the colonies in America, for instance. Okay, if you roll that in, you roll Australia in. I mean, was South Africa part of the Commonwealth at one point?
Well, so we had the Boer War where we invented the concentration camp.
Yeah, okay, so right. So you roll that in, you take all of that in, and I think Cecil Rhodes, British.
One of ours.
Yeah, okay. All right.
We win.
You win. No, you win. It's crazy how much you win,
we
too.
Win.
No, you win by a mile. You win by a mile. So if you start, like, if you add, you win. You win. Now, we are a healthy descendant of that, and we're trying to pick up the torch, you know, and we're trying to compete. But no, I think, like, on a historical, in terms of world impact, there just is no.
See, this is why in Hollywood all the villains have English accents. It's because we're the originator.
Right.
So the first word in Between the World and Me is sun. The first word.
Wait, why don't the French win, though?
Okay,
so the French have Haiti.
They've got Haiti. They've
Algeria,
got
North Africa.
the nuclear testing in the Pacific. That's pretty bad.
Christ.
It's pretty bad. The Satif massacre, the massacre in Paris of, I can't remember, it was 61 or 63, something like that.
The British win just because they had the bigger empire, right? Isn't that why?
Yeah, that's the thing. Boats.
Yeah, boats. Win because of the boats.
we had boats.
Right. Okay, all right, you got it. I'm in the font of it. I'm in the heart of it.
And that's why, look, that's why Napoleon in the end couldn't make the continental system work.
Right.
We were too good at breaking that blockade. And that's also kind of one of the only reasons why we wanted to abolish the slave trade, was to really fuck over the French.
Wow. I can't believe y'all win.
We win.
You do.